We're going to finish chapter 5, section A, which we started talking about on Wednesday. I did not post the Wednesday night video, but I will post it. I will start trying to. I knew you guys were probably not as concerned about the ones in the past, other than that one telling you how to do the project. So I went ahead and posted that one, but I will try to stay on top of that. I think that that's working where I'm loading them in YouTube, and we'll talk about that when we're going through the project too. Um, so if you're having trouble finding them, okay, lovely human beings. I probably will talk through some of this that we talked about last class, um, very briefly, so I'm not going to reteach it because that would be boring. But we talked about statistical reasoning, and we kind of talked about the difference between a population and a sample. So when you're talking about a population, you're talking about the big overarching group. An example would be if I were talking about North Little Rock High School, all the students from North Little Rock High School, if I wanted to know some information about them, I could say that was my population. If I wanted to talk about a sample, because the reality is we probably cannot get information from every single student at North Little Rock High School. It's a really big high school. So if I might look at a sample of that group to make a conjecture or an inference about the whole population. And the sample would be a smaller representation of that group. Okay, so I would try to find a way to sample some students from North Little Rock High School that are a good representation of the whole high school. Okay. Population parameters are numbers that describe the population. Sample statistics are numbers that describe the sample. And a lot of times we use sample statistics to make statements about the population. And so they give a couple of examples of those things. Um, we also talked about different kinds of sampling methods. So we talked about simple random sampling, which is just similar to put everybody's name in a hat and draw a name out so that everybody has an equal chance of being selected. We talked about systematic sampling, which is like every third person or if I'm going to like a housing or a subdivision, I might knock on every fifth door. But there's a system. It's like and there's going to be a number. Every 10th, this one's saying every 10th or every 50th member of the population. Convenient sample is just that. What it says, it's convenient. So not always the best way to get a sample, but to get a convenient sample, you could um, go stand out in front of Walmart and just ask the people that are coming in. Okay, it's a way that is convenient. Stratified is when you want to make sure that you get specific groups out of a population to be sampled. So, in other words, if it's going to be important for me to survey North Little Rock High School, and if I find samples and I only sampled the football team, then I probably um, nowadays things are just different. So I don't know how to even say that. Most of the time, typically, I can say that. Typically, the people on the football team are boys. So if I really wanted to make sure I got a sample and it included girls, that probably wouldn't be the best way to sample. So stratified sampling kind of forces you to maybe go, okay, I'm going to survey the English classes, and in the English classes, I want the teacher to draw two boys and two girls out of a hat. And that way I make sure that I've got a representation from both boys and girls in the sample. That's stratified when you're trying to reach not just the population, but you're trying to reach groups within the population. We could even talk about ethnicities. I always say that word wrong. But if I want to make sure that I get some Hispanic students, we have to be careful about all this nowadays. But if I was trying to get different, because I wanted to make sure everybody's voice was heard, right? I want to get different representations in the population. So that might even mean down to something a little bit more subjective, like I might want to make sure that I got 5 answers from an athlete, 5 different athletes. 5 answers from people that are in the band, 5 answers from people that are in the choir. So I might want to make sure I can include every organization in the high school if I was going to make sure that I was getting a good sample. That's what stratified means, is that you're trying to, within the population, ensure that you are getting equal representation of different groups. Okay. So they kind of give us a picture. We talked about, and all of this was we went through and talked about some examples. We did this on Wednesday night, and I sent out these notes. So you're welcome to go back and look at them, but I don't want to bore people that were here with them. So we got to this place where we had the definition of bias. So all of this stuff is new. A statistical study suffers from bias if its design or conduct tends to favor certain results. So I will just say that whenever I started studying this, I'm going back to look see if we've had anybody else. Actually, we've had somebody leave. Um, so when I was studying this, and we were talking about bias, I kind of thought it meant like similar to being prejudiced, like you're biased against something, or you have a. But it's not. That's not really what it is. Okay, it has some similarity to it, but it's basically saying that you are kind of, whether you intentionally are or not, you are making the study that you're doing tend to give you a certain result. Okay, we're going to talk about what that means, but you're kind of messing with the study so that it doesn't give real accurate results. I don't know what I just did there, but sorry about that. I made my screen crazy. Y'all can't see that, but okay. So a statistical study suffers from bias if its design or conduct tends to favor certain results. So, there are different kinds of studies. We can talk about an observational study. So, researchers observe or measure characteristics of the sample members but do not attempt to influence or modify these characteristics. So, an observational study is exactly what it says. You're just on the outside kind of observing what's happening. It may be given a certain thing, but you're just kind of you're it should always involve something that you're observing. In an experiment, researchers apply a treatment to some or all of the sample members and then observe the effects of the treatment. So if you're going to do an experiment, you have to have a treatment that you are applying. Now, the treatment can be lots of different things. Um, it doesn't have to be medicine. We're going to talk about some of the different ones here in a minute, but an experiment has to have something that you are doing to the thing or people that are involved, and you're watching for the results. Okay. When you do an experiment, you have a treatment group. This is the group of sample members who receive the treatment being tested. And like I said, that could be a drug or it could be something else. It could be, um, I'm trying to think. It's like we all go to like trying to test out different drugs, but it could be that you're testing a behavior, like you're testing whether if I do this, if if this behavior is applied to these people, then what do they do, right? So if I say this in a mad voice, or if I say this in a whatever voice, what is their reaction? So it doesn't necessarily have to be medicine. That's just what we end up thinking. The control group in an experiment is the group of sample members who do not receive the treatment being tested. So they're just the ones that were kind of hanging out. They don't know what, sometimes they don't know whether they're getting the treatment or not, but they are the control. A lot of times we'll talk about that being like the placebo, like you'll hear people talk about the water, like somebody giving somebody a water pill, or a sugar pill. It just doesn't have anything in it that would affect them. And so they're the control group. Treatment and control groups must be selected randomly and be alike except for the treatment. So here we go. A placebo. A placebo lacks the active ingredients of the treatment being tested in a study, but it looks or feels enough like the treatment so that the participants cannot distinguish whether they are receiving the placebo or the real treatment. So this would be, and we're fixing to talk about the placebo effect in a minute, but if you were trying to test out a diet pill, if you're trying to test out a diet pill, Katie Jones, sorry, some people might get a pill that has nothing in it. Other people might get the real pill. And I don't know about you, but there are times whenever in my life where I thought, look, we all know that like most diet pills are not effective, right? But at the very beginning when you're taking them, if you're like me, I paid money for this thing and I really wanted it to work. And so in my mind, I might not eat as much or I might exercise more or something that would cause me to lose weight just because I know that I'm taking this pill and I think it's going to work, right? Um, and that's what they're saying the placebo effect is. It refers to the situation in which patients improve simply because they believe they are receiving a useful treatment. Just can be sometimes it can just be the power of you want it to work. You paid a lot of money for it, so you're hopeful that it's going to work. Okay, so blinding. This is not actually talking about making someone blind. This is talking about who knows about the experiment. So, in statistical terminology, the practice of keeping people in the dark about who is in the treatment group and who is in the control group is blinding. Okay, and you could see why that would be important, especially if you aren't doing something that involves drugs. If you're looking at some kind of test that involves more of an observation kind of thing, um, just the way that you word your question could be an issue. So I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But if you were monitoring a group of children who had maybe ADHD and you were trying to see if this new drug was going to work, okay, and you really, for whatever reason, you really don't want it to work, or you or I don't know, maybe you're just mad that day, but you could easily affect how that treatment is going to come out or how the results are going to come out by the way you treat that child, right? I mean, if a child comes in and you're observing them, they've taken the medicine 30 minutes ago and you say, "Hey, Jasmine, why don't you come and have a seat by me and let's talk?" And you say it like that. That's a big difference than if you say, "Jasmine, get over here and sit down." Right? Like, the way and the tone of your voice could affect the experiment. So you really don't want the people doing any of the testing to know who took the actual pill that works and who took the pill that doesn't work because they could affect what's going on. And a lot of these things have a lot of money tied to them, especially if it's testing of a drug. Um, so, how do you blind things? An experiment is single blinded if the participants do not know whether they are members of the treatment groups or members of the control group, but the experimenters do know. So, this is one that I was saying, if I knew as the experimenter whether which drug you took, whether you took the real one or the fake one, not probably a good idea. Okay, a double blind experiment is when the people doing the experiment and the test subjects. So the I'm saying that wrong. The people who are putting on the experiment and the people who are participants, neither one of them know. Obviously, if you have a double blind study, somebody has to know, or people are listed like on a computer at the ahead of time and given some kind of a rating, but nobody in doing the actual experiment part of it knows, if that makes sense. Somebody has to know somewhere, but the people doing the experiment and the people who are participating in the experiment do not know if it's double blind. Okay, so let's talk about these real quick. What's wrong with this experiment? What is wrong with this experiment? Let's see. Okay, feel free to speak up. Says for each of these experiments described, identify any problems and explain how the problems could have been avoided. Okay, so when you're doing an experiment, we've talked about some of these issues on Wednesday night, and we're talking about some of them today. But it's very important that you plan your experiment ahead of time so that you know that you are testing people, that is a good representation of the group that you need to evaluate, and that you're being fair, that you're actually getting a random sample of the thing, and that your experiment is actually something that can be measured and that you're able to find results that are applicable. So, and that's what you want to look for when you're looking at when you're researching something. You want to kind of know, is this even something that is can be like looked at? Sometimes I'll see things they're doing on TV, and I will try to bring some to y'all, but I will be like, I can't. That's not even that's not even valid. You can't do that. That's not. It's not providing good results. And here's some of the ones that we can kind of pick through. This says a chiropractor performs adjustments on 25 patients with back pain. Okay, afterward, 18 of the patients say they feel better. He concludes that the adjustments are an effective treatment. Okay, so we got 25 patients. So 18 of them say they feel better. So that must mean that the other seven um, did not feel better, or they felt the same. It doesn't say that. Okay, so is there a problem with this? This is the information that we know. Um, let's look at what they say. We don't have a control group. So remember, the control group is the group that doesn't get the treatment. We don't have one of those here. Everybody got the treatment. I'll also say that if you've dealt with people with back pain, there's a whole lot of different levels, right? So somebody could be hurting really bad and somebody could not be hurting as bad. So the patients that do feel better may be feeling better because the placebo effect. If they paid for this treatment, they want it to work. So they could say it would be important to ask them how they're feeling, maybe the day of, the day after, and then a few days out if you really want to know if it's working, right? So what's wrong with this experiment? New drug. Okay, so that's the one I'm sorry, that's what we would say. It doesn't have a control group, and the patients may be feeling better because of the placebo effect. So they may just be feeling better initially, but not feeling better over long term. Um, the new drug for attention deficit disorder is supposed to make affected children less disruptive. So, sorry, we randomly selected children with ADD. They're divided into treatment and control groups. Well, that's good, right? Also good that they randomly selected children, that they didn't just um, take the first group that they got. There's some kind of a randomness to this, which makes it better. Those in the control group receive a placebo that looks just like the real drug. Also good. The experiment is single blind, which means that the person doing the experiment knows, but the kids don't know who got the real pill and who got the fake pill. Experimenters interview the children one on one to decide whether they became more polite. This is a whole lot what I just got through saying. So it depends on how the interviewer. You can make a child, especially a child with ADHD. I know this from firsthand experience. I'm not trying to be rude, but if a kid has ADHD, I'm not saying all of them, but they have a tendency to not be able to I guess, control emotions sometimes. And I'm not trying to put everybody in a group, but that's definitely one of the signs. They're easy to kind of get a rise out of. So in the classroom, if I have those students in my room, I know exactly who they are, and I in my mind I am telling myself, "You need to be a peacemaker." So that's what I would intend to do to that student, is that there's not a hold them accountable. They need to be held accountable, but also they need to there I don't need to I need to watch the way that I talk to them, because sometimes they're very black and white, similar to an autistic person. Sometimes, I'm not saying everybody, but things hurt their feelings worse a lot of times, and so if there's not a reason to, get a rise out of them, then you don't. So it'd be very easy for an interviewer to say a question to one child like, "Jasmine, come over here and talk to me for a minute," versus, "Jasmine, come over here and sit down." That would be mean, and that's exactly how that student would perceive that. They would not be happy about that. I'm just making sure nobody else has signed on. So, you could easily affect how that student was going to respond by your tone of voice. So, because experimenters know which children receive the real drug during the interviews, they may inadvertently speak differently or interpret behavior differently with these children. Um, my son has a almost 2-year-old little boy, and he is constantly saying, "All kids are wild like this," you know? Well, you want and I do think that the more you love your child, the more that you want their behavior to be okay, and you so sometimes if you want a certain result, you're more apt to go, "Oh, I think that your interpretation of the behavior may be less drastic." So if you're really wanting this drug to go work on the market, you may perceive a child that has ADHD in their response, though even though it is harsh, you may perceive it as not as harsh because you really want it to work. So the experiment should have been double blind so that the experimenters did not know. The conductors did not, whoever's conducting the interviews did not need to know. Okay. So there's kind of an example of things that are not good interviews. I'm sorry, not good experiments. Um, so a retrospective study is an observational study that uses data from the past, such as official records or past interviews. So a lot of times we will want to know some information and we are not doing a study, but there is information already out there about whatever we are looking at. So, for instance, this is just popping in my head. Um, the number of fatalities of people who are not wearing a seatbelt. So, if I went to like a national reporting tool, I could probably find that information. I could probably find the number of accidents, um, and the survival rates of people wearing seatbelts versus the numbers of them not. That would be retrospective. I'm looking at information that already exists. The sample naturally divides into a group of cases who engaged in the behavior under study and a group of controls who do not. I can't. I guess I remember this from last semester because I promise you I did not look at this. A good example is whether seatbelts save lives. So yeah, there we could go look that up. We could go figure that out by just looking up. Okay, let's look at the results in 2000. Let's look at 2001, and so we could find that information. It's just information that they already have recorded. We could look at things like unemployment rates. Have they gone up or down? It's using information that already are numbers that already exist. And people do that a lot to find out new information. Margin of error. This might give some people trouble, but it's really pretty easy. The margin of error is used to describe a confidence interval, there's a big word, that is likely to combine the true population parameter. So, a confidence interval from sample statistics minus the margin error to the sample statistic plus the margin of error is a confidence interval. So here is an example of that. An election eve, elections crack me up because of how much stats there are and how misunderstanding people are of the stats. And here's a perfect example. An election eve poll finds that 52% of surveyed voters plan to vote for Smith. And she needs a majority, more than 50%, to win without a runoff. Okay, so if she gets 50.01, she has won. Okay, the margin of error in the poll is 3% percentage points. Now, I know that you probably are old enough that you have paid attention to some presidential elections, and you'll be like, if you're watching it on the news, such and such state won't call it. Like it's very close, or it's and and you'll notice that they haven't even sometimes haven't even turned in all the votes, but they've called it because they know that there's not going to be enough that's going to come that is going to affect it. So that's what this is right here, the confidence interval. So it says an election eve poll finds that 52% of surveyed voters plan to vote for Smith, and it has a margin of error of 3 percentage points. So what that means is when it's the margin of error, you are going to take whatever that is and you're going to subtract it off whatever percentage that they found. So 49% when you subtract the 3% margin of error, and you're also going to add it on to the 52%. So this range between 49 and 55 is what we can bet our money on. Okay. So in this test, this range from 49 to 55 is what we can place our bet on. So the question was, will she win? Well, we don't have enough information to tell if she's going to win because we can only place our money on the fact that we think it's 49% to 55% that she is going, that's the percentage of votes she's going to get. We know it's going to be 49% to 55%. So if she falls in that 49 to 50, it's not enough. If I know that's not very many, that's not a big part of this section, but it still exists in there. And so because it contains 49 and not all of this is bigger than 50%, the confidence interval leaves open the possibility that she would receive less than 50%, so the election is too close to call. So they have to wait until there's enough information there that they are willing to bet that, hey, even if we get the rest of the votes, this person's already won. So in that case, all of this would be above 50%. Okay. So there is that lovely thing. When you find the margin of error, you're adding it and subtracting it from the percentage. Okay. Questions about that stuff? I know that so that's just the first section of 5A of the next stats thing. It's really not, it's really a lot more of the definitions and not math. Okay. So let's talk about the project that we are working on. And I'm going to go to my Blackboard. So, and I'm putting it on the student preview so you can see what I'm seeing. Okay. So when you're doing your project, so I'm looking at the chat. Does anybody have any questions before I start talking about this real quick? Okay, this project is worth a lot of points, okay? So I don't want you to miss out on it. So when you go to Module 2, there are a couple of things that you will notice. So the actual project says Family Budget Activity Project. And so when you go here, you're going to see the directions for the project, and you're gonna see the spreadsheet. And I'm gonna come back here in just a minute and kind of talk through some of that with you. There is also a place that says this Sunday to try to get this part completed. If you will do this part, this is where you turn in the Excel document before you mess with their budget, okay? So in other words, before you turn in what they're doing now. And that way we can before you move forward with the stuff for the next week, I will be able to say, "Hey, you've got the numbers right. You're on the right track." Um, that's why that's there. It's helpful and it kind of gets you to at least get that part knocked out, okay? So you're going to fill in their original budget and you're going to turn it in here. And then by Monday of next week, I'm going to get back with you and say, you're correct, you're not correct. We need to talk about what's going on with your budget or whatever, and we can move forward so that the next Sunday you'll have the whole thing ready to be turned in. And this is where you turn in the whole thing, family budget project submission. Okay. So what are we turning in? This is what it looks like. So this is what I was saying. You need to turn in by this Sunday. It's where you go in and you fill out this Excel document. And how do you find the information to fill out the Excel document? You go right here and it gives you some directions. Okay. I this should say they changed the name of the project, so I'll change it. I'm sorry. It's supposed to be Hanaway. But anyway, here's the document. So let's just kind of talk through this so that you can kind of get an idea of what you're supposed to do. We did the practice one. So if you did the practice one, you're probably on top of your game. Um, McKinley emailed me that the spreadsheet had something wrong with it, and so I had that is fixed now. So, and I worked through the whole thing this morning, so it should be fine now. But anyway, you want to be careful that you know you're doing a monthly budget, and also you want to be careful about if they're not currently doing it, you don't put it on the budget now. We'll talk about that as we kind of go through this. So if you want to jot down some notes, okay? Jack and Elsie Hanaway currently have two children, an Australian Shepherd. Jack works as an IT systems analyst. His current annual salary is $86,000. So he does not make $86,000 a month. On his salary, you're going to need to divide that by 12 because you're doing a monthly salary, right? Monthly budget. So they have barely started saving for retirement and are not receiving the full company match on their 401k. To qualify for the maximal matching funds from Jack's employer, they would need to triple their current 401k contributions. Are they doing that right now? No. So they're not tripling any contributions. You don't put anything down about that because they're not handling that right now. They would like to do that, but they're not doing it. So only put what they're doing right now. They tend to spend more than they make each month, but are not sure how much. They feel like they have too much credit card debt and they don't have enough money set aside for family savings in categories of emergency, Christmas, medical, or vacation. The Hanaways feel unsure where the money is going and would like to start a monthly budget action plan. In summary, they need your help. Okay. So, um, okay. I it's fine if you added a place on your own. The new Excel document has that in there. So if you already did it on your own and you want to keep it that way, perfectly fine. Um, but I think the new one's fixed. That's a good question, Asia Burton. So the only thing that is there that we should have filled out is the salary. Nothing else. We've not done. It's not talked about anything else. Okay. Is everybody okay up until this point? Okay, I'm gonna keep going then. And I will talk about this project several times before now and then, but your main part that you're worried about now is trying to just get the Excel document filled out with what's happening right now. So it goes on to say we're building the budget as it is right now. Each month, Jack's payroll deductions include $721.84 for federal income tax, $288.37 for state income tax, and $548.25 for their FICA tax. Currently, $151.49 is being deducted and deposited into Jack's 401k. I'm not tripling that right now because that's what they want in the future. So we're not worried about that. We're going to put exactly what's here. And these are all monthly. So these are the exact numbers that should go in there. Number two, probably one of the biggest concerns for the Hanaways right now is getting on top of their credit card debt. Their current MasterCard balance is $8,462. It's being assessed a 21% APR finance charge, and they have a minimum monthly payment of $214.58. So you're not having to figure out what their monthly payment is. They're telling you. They plan to pay off their debt within 3 years, but this would require increasing their monthly credit card payment to $313.75 in order to meet their goal. They are not doing the $313.75 right now. So you don't do the $313.75 on the original budget. You can do it on the new budget you're going to make for them, but you don't do it on the original budget. This one you need to put in $214.58. That's what they are doing right now on the original budget. The family bought a home 5 years ago for $275,000. Their loan is for 30 years at a fixed rate of 6.13% APR, and their monthly payment is $1,564.72. So there's their monthly mortgage payment. They carry homeowners insurance with an annual premium. Annual premium means that's how much they pay for the whole year. $1,714. So you're going to need to divide that by 12 because there's 12 months in a year to find out how much they pay every month. They are insuring their home with a different company than their vehicle insurer and hope to combine both policies with the same insurer to save 15% on premiums. The Hanaways pay $1,568 every 6 months. So we're doing a monthly budget, so we're going to need to divide this $1,568 by 6 to put how much they pay in county property taxes. Number 4, each month they currently pay a cable bill of $103.62, internet bill of $87.94, cell phone of $141.26, and their utility bills for electricity, natural gas, water, sewage, and garbage are, when they use this word respectively, this is in order. So the first thing they mentioned was electricity. So this number, 163.41, is going to go with that. Natural gas is the next number, 109.58. And this water, sewage, and garbage, that's the last number, 81.77. And those are monthly, so I can put exactly what's there. The Hanaways are a 2-vehicle family. They own an older minivan that is paid for, but recently purchased a brand new F-150 4x4. Woo, that's probably expensive. They had to borrow just under $30,000. There's no way that costs $30,000. We all know that. At 8% APR, which resulted in a $408.76 for a monthly payment, which is not, anyway, that price probably should have been a little bit more. But anyway, so there's their monthly payment for their vehicle. They spend about $600 per year on vehicle maintenance. So we need to know what's happening per month. So we're going to have to divide the 600 by 12 before I put it in the budget. $894 every 6 months for the insurance premium. So I'm going to need to divide that by 6 because I need a monthly budget. Lately, they have been averaging about $182 per month. That's by month, so that's good for gasoline on the van and truck combined. So because the family rarely plans out their weekly meals or uses coupons, $800 is a typical monthly average on groceries. They eat out a lot too, $175 a month. They're also members of a health club. It's $83 a month. They pay $155 a month for clothes. Their entertainment's $150. Their household supplies about $75. Miscellaneous $157. And their monthly dog food, and vet bills for their Australian Shepherd are about $96. They also pay approximately $90 to various charities each month. They also set aside $100 a month per kid for kids' activities. These are things they're currently doing, so they go on the budget. Jack still carries student loan debt from earning his bachelor's degree. It tells us that his current loan payment is $248.72 a month. The Hanaway family has not explored refinancing options or making additional principal payments as they are currently focused on managing their credit card debt and day-to-day expenses, so they're just planning on leaving this as it is. Finally, the Hanaways are doing their best to protect their family with health and life insurance. They pay $496.55 for their health insurance a month and $72 quarterly for their life insurance. So if it's quarterly, it means they pay it 4 times a year. So if they pay $72 4 times a year, that means that they're paying this $72 is for 3 months. If you don't write anything down, this is the one people mess up. This $72 is for 3 months, so you need to divide that by 3 before you put it in the budget because it's paid quarterly. Okay, then I'm going to tell you that I put those, it seems like a lot of stuff to fill in, and there's some other people in this class have already done it. So tell me if I'm wrong, but I maybe spent 15 minutes, and the main problem was just me trying to read careful and put the things in the right spaces. But this should not take you very long. Just make sure that you are actually putting the monthly cost of whatever it is in, and that's what you're turning in when it says net cash flow check submission. That's what we're trying to see if you're close to what you should be getting. It says down here at the bottom that you should be getting around a negative 850. You should be in the hole about $850 approximately. If you're getting that, then you're pretty close to being okay. If you've tried and you're not getting that, turn in what you have so that we can talk about it. Either I can talk about whoever's is turned in Wednesday night if you want to turn it in early, so you can go ahead and finish your project if you want to. But this is just kind of a stop and go, okay, are the numbers I have correct? And if they're not, I don't mind helping with that at all. That's what that turn in that net cash flow check submission is for. So when you do your project, you're going to answer these analysis questions. Okay. You might actually have to look up, like this says, what financial experts recommend as a maximum percentage for your mortgage. I'm reading this. Compare the homeowner's total percentage. So it's talking about their mortgage here. So you might have to actually look up that information to figure out what percentage of your salary should go towards that. Okay. We can talk about that a little bit more next time, but that's what the questions are not real difficult, but you might have to look up some of the information. Here's what a completed project is supposed to look like. You can either make a PowerPoint or you can put it on some kind of document that has different pages. I don't care. Okay. But it all needs to be together as one thing when you turn it in. You need a title page. That should have this stuff on it. Your name, the name of the activity, your class. I don't care if you put the section, but I'm Miss Hill, and you could put the date. That's not hard. Okay, page number 2, the original Hanaway family budget. So if you do this when you turn it in and we go over and check it, all you have to do is take a screenshot of the budget you came up with and put it on page 2, because that's going to be the original family budget. Page 3 is the new improved budget that you came up with based on the directions with the activity. The cash flow should be 0 in this one. So you're going back and you're looking at the things that they want to have added to their budget, and you're also having to come up with how do I get that to fit in their budget? What am I going to take away? But you're doing a new budget for them on page 4. And so you can screenshot, you can use the same spreadsheet that we used, and you can screenshot it and put it there. Page number 4. You need to have a category for additions. You need to have a category for increases, deletions, or decreases. You need to have 4 categories, okay? And you need to put in words what you did. What things did you add to the budget? So, in other words, I think that they said they wanted to triple their 401k deposit. So you would say, I added, well, actually, that wouldn't be an added, that would be an increase. I'm not going to be real picky about the words, but I increased that would go under increase. I increased their 401k from this monthly to this monthly. Okay. If an addition that they need is they need an emergency fund. So their emergency fund was 0. I added $50 to it. That would go under additions. If you decided that, hey, they don't really need to eat out, so I'm going to delete that. So under deletions, you would say, I am deleting their 100 and whatever from eating out and bringing that down to 0. You're describing what you're doing in each one of those sections. This is important. You don't want to leave that out because it's part of explaining what you did on the budget. The 5th page or slide will have the answers to the 3 analysis questions. That's this stuff right here. You can copy and paste it if you want to. The 6th page or slide will have the answers to the 3 discussion questions. Copy and paste it if you want to, but here they are. And then you are turning this in. So that is what you're supposed to do. And you turn it in under module 2, right where it says family budget project submission, right here. Okay, so that is that project. Now, I am looking ahead to see if yeah, okay, so we're okay. Um, so that's it. That's what you're supposed to be working on. We've also gone over 5A, so you should be able to do that homework on 5A. Anybody have questions about this stuff? I'm going to stop recording.